go away for my sake. You did not meditate, you did not concentrate, you did not meditate, you did not concentrate, and passed your time in idle words for my sake. Make your head way 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 for my sake. Hello friends, Nayaswami Hriman here, and it is Friday, August 20th. We're way past the halfway mark in our summer season and our march towards the equinox in the fall. And I'm speaking to you from the Camino Hermitage on Camino Island. This series of noonday broadcasts features generally unpublished material by Paramahansa Yogananda. But today I'm going to do something a little different, inspired by a class that was given on Wednesday night at Ananda online on Zoom, and it was based on this book, God is for Everyone. So yes, this is published, but here's why I consider it unpublished. You see, Paramahansa Yogananda, he was a young Swami, still in his, I suppose, I'm not sure, around 20 years old anyway, maybe a little younger. And he was inspired to take a boat to Japan during his absence. His brother died, and that was no coincidence. He said of his life later on that it was difficult for any other person close to him to meet their rendezvous with Yama, the Lord Yama, death, if he was present, if he, Yogananda, was present. So he would absent himself when it was time, rightly so, for someone close to him to leave their body. Anyway, on that trip, he received the inspiration for the seed mission, the core message of his life, of his life's work. And that message is, in fact, by him, encapsulated in the Sanskrit term Sat Chidanandam. Sat Chidanandam. It's a description of God, it's a description of reality. It is a description of consciousness, which is the sole underpinning, the sole reality behind all creation. And it means roughly, as Yogananda translated, ever existing, meaning immortal, without beginning, without end. Ever conscious, which is to say omnipresent in all things and beyond all things. And ever new joy, blissful. It was a term that the first Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, or Swami Shankara, employed, though he did not make up the term, in his reformation of Hinduism long ago in the first millennium AD. And this thesis was basically that Yogananda had as his seed core mission was that all souls, all human souls, well, all beings, but let's just stick with people for now, seek happiness and wish to avoid unhappiness, wish to avoid suffering and pain. And as you know, the great Lord Buddha made the solving of the riddle of suffering his life's work. No coincidence there. And so Yogananda penned some of his precepts down, as I just mentioned very briefly, seeking happiness, avoiding pain. And then he turned it over to a friend of his, because he wrote it in Bengali. He turned it over to a friend of his to write in Bengali, or maybe it was English, English, to write out and fill out Yogananda's thoughts as he expressed them verbally. And that became his first book, so-called The Science of Religion. The problem is he didn't write it. And as Swami Kriyananda mentions in this book, God is for Everyone, which he considers to have been written by Yogananda, but in fact, Swami Kriyananda, wrote it, that book, Science of Religion, it's an interesting book, but it doesn't really have the master's vibrations, and it expresses, but it expresses his seed inspirations in somewhat academic or intellectual, or by today's modern terms, over 100 years later, in language that is somewhat stilted. And so Swami Kriyananda felt inspired to write as though this book, God is for Everyone, is what Paramahansa Yogananda really intended. And remember, Swami Kriyananda had the benefit of coming to Yogananda in the latter years of Yogananda's life. He had the benefit of the entire breadth of Yogananda's teaching, its fullest expression. And he, Swami Kriyananda, being an excellent writer himself and very clear-minded as well as inspired, was able, therefore, in the latter years of his own life, to pen the book that Yogananda intended to write. Now, I'm going to move a little distant here and surprise you because I have another book. This book, The Future of God, by Deepak Chopra. This too has a long story. I guess I'll just keep it here for you to look at. Somehow I got it through some East-West bookshop event, or I don't know how I got the book. It wasn't anything I purchased, because I have my own history with Deepak Chopra, or I should say Ananda does. But in fact, Deepak Chopra has really has expressed Dwapara consciousness, has done the world many favors. He put himself on the map, and he, in the process, put the science, the medical healing arts of the ancient science of yoga applied to healing, which is called Ayurveda. He put it on the world map. He had the credentials as a licensed Western educated physician, though he was from India. He had those credentials so that when he wrote his first book, I can't think of the name right now, it's quite famous. Quantum Healing was one of them. I'm not sure that was the most famous, but it might have been. And in any case, he put Ayurveda on the map. And he wrote more books he might have even written more books than Swami Kriyananda, though I'm not sure about that. And he is like a machine. He writes books, he gives lectures. In this book, he even revealed that he discovered social media and tweets. He uses Twitter. Anyway, so he's a little bit of a mixed bag, but he is a genius. And I had this book, and I started to read it, but I didn't get very far. But I took it to me on our vacation to Mexico with our grandchildren. We just got back a few days ago. And I read it on the airplane ride back, or most of it. And I'm very impressed. But you know something? I almost think that he got his ideas from this book. Now, he's a doctor. He's very much a scientist or scientifically minded. But you can see the devotion that he extracts from his upbringing in India, number one, which he rejected like everybody in scientific culture. So there is a devotion there, but it's pretty well hidden. And the book is excellently written. It's different than this one. It's just different, I would say that Chopra's book would appeal more to someone who had no interest in Paramahansa Yogananda, never heard of him. When Swami's book, or really Master's book, Yogananda's book, he starts from a higher plane of consciousness than Chopra. And that's not a critique of poor Mr. Dr. Chopra, but in our view, Yogananda was an avatar after all. So his starting point is sort of in a different octave, but really they go to the same places. In future broadcasts, I may actually talk more about this. I don't necessarily recommend it to you, because I don't think you who are listening to this need this book. But I do some public teaching, and so I find these kinds of things interesting. But you might have a friend who's much more science-oriented, believes as scientific materialism and so forth does, that the matter has produced consciousness, that in so doing it's somewhat random, related only to our ability to survive, that sort of thing. I should say Chopra very much attacks the dogmatic atheists, starting with Richard Dawkins, who's now dead, but then some others as well, and he just excoriates them. He does so in I would say a kindly manner, but because Chopra is highly intelligent, he just makes mincemeat, if you pardon that phrase, out of scientific materialism. But so have other books as well. Joseph Selby's book, The Physics of God, is another wonderful book, bringing leading-edge science, as Chopra does, the findings of quantum physics and astrophysics, bringing us beyond the world of matter. Chopra's book is excellent, though, because it really takes you, as does Master's book through Swami, takes us to transcendence. It takes us to Swami's life-changing inspiration. He never tired of speaking of his life-changing inspiration. Was on that beach in wherever that was, South Carolina, I guess. I don't really know those states very well. He went out on the beach, just his mind a frenzy and a fury to understand truth. And he came up with the concept that God must be consciousness. And that's what Chopra's book leads us to. That's what Master's book through Swamiji leads us to. And really, it's deeply inspiring for me personally. But Chopra's book, The Future of God, has for its benefit, I think, in the bigger picture outside a specific spiritual path like the discipleship path, as with Yogananda, because it's very much in tune with the scientific, evidence-based inquiries of our consciousness in this age. And though Chopra never mentions discipleship, he quotes many great gurus and spiritual teachers down through the ages and into modern life, and all excellent. He quotes St. Francis, St. John of the Cross, and some Advaita Vedantins like Maharaj, I can't say his name, Nisargadatta Maharaj, in the lineage of Ramana Maharshi, one of my great idols. And so really where the world is going is in a desperate need to rediscover spirituality. And religion is a necessary expression in order to give our spiritual aspirations some form, because we're in this physical body. We can't help. We dress certain ways. Look at this crazy shirt. I've had it about 40 years. It's as ugly as they come. Came from Kmart probably 40 years ago. I wear it when I'm doing household chores and gardening outside here on the Hermitage. It's as ugly as sin, but isn't it fun? And so, Chopra's book, also Master's book, but it's Master's book, so it may, not get. Chopra, let's face it. I love to think that Master is famous in the autobiography, but Chopra is a monster, and so for the general public, I do recommend Chopra. He has exercise. It's really well done. I didn't think I was going to like it. I just brought it. I don't even know why I brought it on my trip. Didn't open it till the airplane ride back the other day. But I may talk more about it. for the benefit of your friends, because you don't really need it. But what you might consider doing, and here's an offer to you, because I got to sign off here. Wednesday night, several nights ago, one of our great teachers, Bema Breckenridge, gave a 1-hour talk on this book. Now, I'd rather you buy the book, and you can buy it through East West still, or Ananda Temple if you come by Bothell. But if you're too lazy to buy the book, or too lazy to read it, too cheap to buy it and too lazy to read it, doggone you, then you contact me through Ananda or any other way you can find me, and I will send you the link for free of Bema's wonderful talk explanation of this book. Okay, well, you can't beat a deal like this, and you sure can't beat a talk like mine today, right? I mean, give me a break. Okay, so I had a lot of fun, and if anybody watched this, if you watch it to the end, you might have had some fun too. Okay, great souls, I'm going to say sayonara, adios, arrivederci, hasta luego, baby.